Y'all know what it is.
Hey there, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Eggs. This week, we have special guest, American Bladesmith Society Mastersmith and judge of the wildly popular History Channel show Forged in Fire, Jay Nielsen. Jay has been making blades for more than a quarter of a century from his shop in the woods in the endless mountains of Pennsylvania, and he turned his passion for knife making into the opportunity of a lifetime when the History Channel came knocking. Known as the judge who dramatically tests the durability of contestants' blades during the show, his segment is one of the most entertaining aspects of the program. Here to talk about the life and times of a bladesmith, the experience of bringing a time-honored crafts to the masses through television, and what the future holds for him and the upcoming season of Forged in Fire, please welcome to the show, Jay Nielsen. Hey, Jay, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Doing good, guys. How about you?
Excellent. Glad to have you.
Doing great. Yeah, really appreciate
you guys really played that up a lot. lower your expectations.
That's all right. We try and come out swinging, and then, we hope that people tune in for the first 5-10 minutes. And then, after that, it's all just kind of fluffy.
Maybe they just get lazy and just don't want to change the channel.
Exactly. Well, cool.
I know that from Forge and Fire.
That's awesome. Well, I guess let's maybe sort of begin at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and sort of how you got into making knives in the first place.
I'm a very non-career oriented youth. Was born in Jersey, moved around a lot, got out of Jersey as soon as I could. And then I started kind of traveling around, checking things out and, get a job here, get a job there. I've done a little bit of a lot of things. But like I said, I was never big into school. I mean, I graduated high school and that was as far as I wanted to go. It was good enough. I was the first one in my family to graduate high school. So, I mean, that was enough. Nobody's going to pester me to go to college or anything like that. And I was, doing various jobs, and, I had a little bit of an anger management issue when I was younger, and I started making knives because I always liked the books from the old movies, from the 80s and 90s, the sword swinging, dagger in the back kind of stuff. I always thought that was pretty cool, and I didn't have enough money to buy knives, so I tried making them. I started off just doing some stock removal stuff, grinding out blades, saw blades and files and such. And that was fun for a while, but I wanted to do more. And that was right around the time that Phil Moran started, bringing Damascus back. Yeah, it was like, and he wasn't even keeping it a secret. He was handing out pamphlets at knife shows and stuff like that. This was a little bit before my time. But I just loved the look of it, and I loved the way you could take steel and manipulate it in different ways, several different ways, and I wanted to do that. And a lot of my friends who were starting out were buying sheets of Damascus, and I was too stubborn and pig-headed for that. I was going to make my own. So I was at a small knife show in Pennsylvania in Lewisburg, and this gentleman by the name of Keith Bagley had a table across the room from me. And basically came over, and he was a full-time farrier, and he made Damascus and forged and stuff. And he took pity on me, invited me down to his shop for the weekend, and taught me the basics in a few days, and just basically cut me loose. And it was just a hobby, but it was a hobby that I really enjoyed a lot, and it just basically really just snowballed out of control. I had no intention of making knives to sell, let alone making a living doing it, let alone anything on a TV show doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that.
I love how it went from just a hobby into a full-time thing. And that kind of happens a lot to people. They just kind of, I'm going to paint some pictures. They're full-time doing what they love, which is great. So that's a great story. How long did it take?
I had a slight.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say I had a slight problem with my previous marriage. Where she told me I was making knives too much and I needed a hobby. And I was like, no, look what happened to the last hobby I started. What, now I'm going to start making, model airplanes professionally or collecting stamps professionally? No, this is it. I'm done.
I love that too. And I wanted to ask, what kind of role did, this guy, Keith Bagley's, what kind of role did he keep going with you? Like, I mean, was it just that couple days of getting together and learning from him, or did he sort of stay in your life as kind of a mentor or somebody you could reach out to as you were proceeding through the career?
Oh yeah, Keith was always around. Yeah, we remained friends for years. We're still friends. Matter of fact, I'm looking forward to going down to the Blade show in a couple of weeks and seeing him, because I haven't seen him in about a year or so. But no, Keith was always one of those guys, like, give him a yell and say, we didn't have so much internet back then, so I'd give him a call and say, hey, I'm having a problem with this. What should I do? And he was always there. And that's one of the things that shocked me about the Knife community. Even back in the day, you could just call somebody up and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this. Got any advice? And they'd tell you. I mean, it's a very rare occasion where somebody's like, well, no, I can't tell you that. That's my secret or something like that. And I mean, if you feel that way, hey, great. Okay. You might have a secret sauce or something like that. We know it's all Thousand Island dressing, but yeah, whatever. We'll figure it out. But people were so open with information and stuff. I remember when I started going to the Blade show about 100 years ago, and I'd always go up. I'd go from my little table in the back of the room. Sorry about that.
Oh,
somebody
no
tried to chime in. But I'd go from my little table in the back of the Blade show all the way to the front to Ed Caffrey's table, who's been a Mastersmith forever and is one of the makers I've always admired. And I'd just grab him and say, hey, come with me. I'd take him back to my table and I'd just point and I'd say, what do I need to work on? And he'd just, no BS. He would just say, okay, this needs a little work. You need to adjust this a little bit more, and you need to work on this. And then I'd do that. And the next year I'd grab him again. Okay, what's next? So yeah, Ed was great at that too. I mean, everybody was. I mean, there's tons of knife makers out there. It's just so helpful. It's crazy.
Well, that's awesome. And I think it's so critical, especially for, I guess, what you would consider sort of old timey or traditional crafts like this. Like, if you don't have people willing to sort of pass down the traditions, then they get lost. And I think it's really important that we have sort of that, I don't know, almost like a journeyman approach to doing this kind of stuff. You start out as the beginner and you sort of work your way up to the craftsman, and then you share that knowledge.
Yeah, this is my wife. My wife right now gives me grief all the time. She goes, why don't you get an apprentice? You're 51 years old. You don't need to be doing as much. I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. My own kids, I can only tolerate in the shop for so long. It's one of those things. It's like, I wouldn't be working. I'd be watching them.
Right.
And I'd be teaching a class all day. So it's like, nah, I like my peace and quiet. It's one of the reasons I like making knives. I can just go in there, turn on the music, turn on an audiobook, crank up the forge, and just be in my own little world.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned Mastersmith, and that comes up on the show a lot. Can you maybe break down what it takes to become a master and how you get that classification?
Yeah, well, with the American Bladesmith Society, you join up, you start out as an apprentice smith, which you don't actually have to apprentice under anybody. I didn't. But you can if you want to, but that's just what they call it. So you pay dues, like $60 a year or something like that, which is dirt cheap. You need to be an apprentice for 2 to 3 years. It's 3 years if you don't take the beginning of the bladesmithing class. 2 years if you do take it. I didn't take it. I didn't have the free time to go down there in a couple of weeks. So 3 years as an apprentice, and then you can take your journeyman testing, which you've got 2 parts to that. You've got the performance test and the judging test. The performance test, you're taking a mono steel blade, no forge welding, no Damascus or anything like that, making a 10-inch blade, 15 inches overall, and you have to cut through free hanging 1-inch rope with 1 swipe. You have to chop a 2x4 in half twice and still be able to shave hair off your arm in the spot you were chopping. And then you do the bend test, which you clamp the blade about 1/3 into a vise, put a pipe on the handle and bend it 90 degrees.
Wow.
And then it's got to come back to usually about at least 30. It can crack a little bit on the edge, but not much. And then once you pass that, you can make 5 knives for judging, which are just, completely finished knives. Again, all mono steel. And then you take those, which I did. I took to Atlanta, and you get judged by a bunch of master smiths. And if you pass, then you're a journeyman smith. Once you're a journeyman, you can go for your master smith in 2 years, which basically involves the same process, except for your test blade, you're making it out of Damascus and a hidden tang. and doing the same rope 2x4 bend test. And then when you go for your judging, which again I did in Atlanta, you can do whatever you want. But one of the requirements is a fluted Quillian Damascus dagger, European Damascus dagger, which if you saw that episode of Forge and Fire where we had that challenge, that dagger that we had displayed was actually the one I used in my testing.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew the person who bought it. So it was like, well, instead of making another one, let's just rent that one from him. So yeah, that was actually my test dagger. And aside from that, you could do whatever you want, but it's got to be that fluted European dagger. And yeah, but I just decided I'd just play it smart, and I did everything in Damascus or etched. Everything was dark because the biggest problem things folks run into with the journeymen is being mono steel and hand rubbing everything and having those little fish hook scratches, which sometimes you can look at multiple lights at home, but those lights in that judging room are brittle. I mean, I remember putting my blades down for journeymen, and I was like, oh, these are perfect, these are great, and I put them down in those lights, and I'm like, what the hell happened? But yeah, that's the basic process to get from starting to mastersmith.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And again, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago, this sort of process, I think this tried and true, begin as an apprentice, work your way through journeyman and on to being a full-blown mastersmith, I think is such an important process for these types of skills. I mean, like there's so much you can do nowadays, learning from YouTube or, things online and that kind of stuff. But I think these original crafts, these, the things that you have to do with your hands, I think it's so important to pass down that knowledge versus, trying to pick it up someplace.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I consider myself an old school maker, because it's great because we get guys that come on the show that are like 19, 20, 21 years old. And it's like, they're kids. What do they know? There's so much information out there nowadays between, streaming, YouTube, the internet, like the DVDs I make, digital downloads I do. There's so much information out there that wasn't, when I was starting out.
Yeah.
And what these young smiths can do is literally amazing. I mean, I'll sit there at the judges table and I'm just like, how the hell did he pull that out of his butt?
Yeah, I honestly think the show's probably revived a lot of that. Just having it in front of people again, and the kids, they're like, hey, Dad, let's go try this. Let's do that. And some of those 19-year-olds that come and compete actually end up winning. So it's pretty interesting to watch. I've really enjoyed the show. So how did
some of those 19-year-olds started watching Forge and Fire, like 5 years ago when they were like 14, 15 years old or whatever, and they're like, I started watching this season 1 and I bugged my dad and mom to let me start, and here I am.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I think that there's kind of something in us as people, that we want to try and move away, or at least for some people, they like to move away from technology and get involved in these sort of hand skills. And I've always talked about, one of the things that we could do that's really great for our mental health is this idea of having sort of a good relationship with ourselves, right? And it's an opportunity to go and be alone and work through a craft and fight through something, whether it's woodworking or knife making. Whatever it is, it's this opportunity. It's almost meditative to sit and spend this time with yourself. And I think it's really important. So for these young people who are picking up these crafts, these trades, I think that they're really, drawn to it on like a much deeper level, which I think reflects in the passion they bring to the projects.
Yeah, it's, I've had a lot of people tell me, because I've worked with a lot of, soldiers, veterans, police, some PTSD, some people just need something to occupy themselves. And this is basically a violent version of yoga. People use yoga or modeling or stuff like, modeling, sculpting, stuff like that, all kinds of, different creative ways to do it. Yeah, we just use fire and beat the hell out of stuff instead.
I love that. Well, do you want to, I guess, maybe transition a little bit into how the show came about and how they found you in the first place? Like, how did all those pieces fall into place?
Yeah, I know you did some videos, YouTube videos beforehand. Is that how they came across you and got you into the show?
Actually, I've asked for years and nobody will ever tell me. I don't know why. I don't know why it's a big secret. I don't think I was the first choice because Doug and Dave had been talking for weeks. And then all of a sudden they were like, who's this Nielsen guy? And they were like, oh, he's a mastersmith. He's probably a douchebag. but they had been talking for weeks before I even got approached. So I think there was somebody up before me and something went wrong. But again, nobody will ever tell me. So I'm gonna have to catch somebody on their deathbed, I guess, to find out. But yeah, I that's what I think, because I've been beating the hell out of my own knives for years, and I did Facebook videos, YouTube videos, and stuff like that. And I think they saw that and saw that at that point in time I wasn't quite a crotchety old guy yet.
Getting
so a lot of the masters, I'm almost there. Grady recently told me I've surpassed that and gone to curmudgeon. But yeah, I think it was one of those things. They were looking for some, somewhat slightly younger guy at the time, and I was known for beating the hell out of stuff and not caring. So I figured, he'll do it to his own stuff. He'll probably do it to other people too with just as much enthusiasm.
Well, you go at it with the force. Like when you any challenge or test that you do, you as a contestant, I wouldn't want you touching my blade. But have you? I've noticed a few times you've actually hurt yourself. Have you done anything like significant on the show by going a little too extreme?
Actually, no. I almost did. I had a wrist surgery about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was not knife related at all. It was a stupid slip and fall. But I had broken one of the small bones in my hand and never did anything about it. And then like 6, 7 years later, I had the surgery. So everybody thinks it was something related to knife making or the show, but it wasn't. But I ended up having a 4-point fusion in my hand, which basically means, the whole back of my palm is like a turtle shell now. And we did an episode when we were still in Brooklyn, which I still hate this episode and wish I hadn't done the test, but there was supposed to be a multi-tool. So I was supposed to be able to take a nail and hammer it through sheet steel. And, pry it out of wood and different stuff like that. But 2 of the contestants made their hammers out of the pommel. And, I'm trying to, take a pommel about that big and hit a nail head about that big. And I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to miss at least once. And I did. I went down and slammed the nail right into the side of my hand and had to go to the ER and all that. And they said, well, you're actually okay. If you didn't have that 4-point fusion, that would have broken your hand. So it's like, oh, okay. So I pre-broke it for this test, apparently. But I mean, no, I've had some crazy stuff happen. I've got some cuts and stuff like that, but it hasn't been anything major. The scariest one was we did I can't remember the name of the sword we did, but it was some kind of, saber. And I went to chop into a wooden post with it, and the blade snapped off and bounced off my neck and rolled down my arm. But I ended up just getting a small little scratch on my arm. That was it. That was probably the scariest one, though.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the risk.
When steel's kissing your neck and it's not supposed to be there. What was it? What was that?
Oh, I was saying, I suppose that's, part of the deal or could be expected, right? I mean, when you're testing these blades like that, you never really know, I guess how well done they were made, or how, if they will actually stand up to the test you're putting them through. So I guess that's part of the risk, right? When you do those sorts of tests.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell somewhat on the surface, but you never know what's below the surface. I mean, we've had blades break that, I thought would be totally fine, and vice versa. But I just tell people, I said, yeah, well, that's the reason we're here being judges, because we're the ones that are stupid enough to do this stuff.
So how's it like working with, Dave Baker and Doug and the rest of the guys on the show? And how has the show changed things for you? Because I'm sure beforehand, you're probably doing your thing, just selling knives, but now you probably can't keep up with people who want knives from you. You probably have a backlog of a year or more.
I started out when we started doing Forged in Fire. I had about a 3 or 4 year backlog already.
Oh wow!
And the biggest thing with Forged in Fire is I can't keep up with the schedule because I had everything kind of scheduled out, like your knife order will get done approximately around these dates. And I just can't do that anymore because, sporadic things with the show and stuff like that. And then the COVID last year didn't help very much either. But the nice thing is that the customers that do have orders, because I tell them all the time, say, look, if the wait time is too long, I'll be happy to help you find another quality smith. And they're like, no, it's okay. We'll wait. It's worth the wait. And it's like, that's just great because I hate waiting for anything. So, I mean, the fact that, folks are willing to wait to begin with, and then there's a delay because of, the TV or COVID or other things. And, they're like, no, that's okay. We'll wait for it. And that just makes me feel really good. It's like, oh, okay. I guess I'm not just a pretty face. You actually do care about the quality of the knives and stuff. So.
Well, that's great. I was going to say, geez, maybe your wife's right. Maybe you need an apprentice. But if people are willing to wait, then maybe it's better to wait.
Well, see, that's the thing too, is I have people ask me on a regular basis, look, is this knife going to be made by you, or is it going to be by somebody else in your shop? Yeah, it's not. Don't worry about that. Everything's made by me.
Yeah.
The only thing I source out is leather sheaths. I got a buddy of mine, Mark Condos, down in Texas, who does my leather, and he does a great job. But other than that, everything's done by me.
Well, and that's awesome. I think that's where the value is. And I think what they're trying to buy is your, mastersmith skill. They're trying to work with you as a personality, versus, having to some apprentice hammer it out and you just sort of overseeing the process. And maybe that's what it becomes one day. But in these days, when you can pick up an original, I'm sure that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. And I like that. I like the fact that, even when I started out, like I'm making stuff that's going to outlast me and it's going to get passed down, to kids and grandkids and stuff like that. That's just, a really cool thing to think about every once in a while.
Yeah, that is really neat. What's a normal time frame to make a knife? How long does it usually take you? And I know, on the show you get 4 hours, but that's not normal.
No, that's not normal at all. Yeah, I look at the knives I did on Piece of Judges when we had 8 hours, start to finish, and it's just like, ugh, I just shudder. It varies a lot depending on materials. I mean, you can make a very simple, EDC knife or something like that in a matter of hours, and then you've got, if you got somebody who wants, sandbar stag scales on a Damascus Bowie with the, S-guard and stuff like that, then you're talking a few dozen hours, so it all varies on the materials and such mostly. But, a lot of it's, mono steel versus Damascus, canister versus laminate, and then a lot of the materials, because some stuff you can't push. You got to work it slow, work it with sharp belts and stuff like that. Otherwise, you're just going to ruin material. So it varies a lot. I try not to be a smart ass and tell people as long as it takes, but hey, sometimes that's honest. Yeah, it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah. Have you noticed, so we were talking, specifically about your knife sales and sort of the backlog that you've generated, but have you seen a change sort of industry wide since Forged in Fire?
Yeah. It's pros and cons, actually. It hasn't really affected me being on the show as a judge. But there are way more knife makers out there than there used to be, because, like I said, it's kind of like a resurgence in knife making and forging and whatnot. So there's more makers out there, which kind of brings the prices down a bit for everybody, at least from what I've seen. But at that same time, the people that are already established that are losing a little bit of money that way, they're making more money on their reputations as being long-term makers by teaching classes, doing demonstrations. They can usually, depending on the quality of the maker, they can usually bump their prices up, significantly more. Maybe not as much as they could before. Maybe they're taking a little bit of a hit, but they're making it up in other ways. Even people that have been on the show and have gone out in the first round, I've talked to a year later, and they say, their sales doubled. They're doing 3 times as many classes as they used to. So it might take a hit with so many new people flooding the market and making knives. But I think the resurgence of knife making and knife buying and all the different aspects you can do with it has helped a lot. Because most people, even if they were into custom knives, didn't know how many options there were. as far as the different steels, the different techniques, like I said, the canisters, the laminates, the sand mize, go mize, all that different stuff. Yeah, it's kind of opened up a bigger catalog for people to look through.
Do you think at the same time, do you think that it's maybe opened up more opportunity for lower quality blades out on the market too? Like people who maybe don't have any business going out and selling blades or outselling blades just because maybe they got wrapped up in the TV show and thought they could do it? Or, I mean, do you think it's good than bad?
I think there is some of that, but I think with me and the other guys that are doing the judging, I think we point out a lot of aspects that people actually look for now. And instead of just, a hunk of steel that looks blade-like with a couple scales on it, now people will pick the knives up and actually look at them and, look at the plunge grinds, look at the alignment, look for gapping and stuff like that. All the same stuff that we do on the show, that we try to point out, every little thing. I mean, granted, some of it gets cut on the floor because, we're doing a 4 or 5 day show in 45 minutes.
Sure.
But I think we're coming up on 200 episodes now. I think all that time, people have picked up a lot of tips and a lot of pointers of what to look for before they buy a knife.
Oh yeah, I've learned so much just by watching it. Like I've wanted to go and buy a forge and try and make a knife now just because of the show, but I haven't pulled the trigger and actually done it. But it fascinates me. There's so many different techniques, there's so many different processes, there's so many different things. And I find myself yelling at the TV like, don't do that, just because of what, you guys have done on the show in the past. You said it takes 4 or 5 days for an episode. Is that standard? Or what's a normal time frame for to record?
Yeah, usually it's supposed, because it's TV, it's supposed to look like it's all pretty much in 1 or 2 days. But normally what we'll do the forging in 1 day, and that's season 2 especially is when we started pushing the fact that at the beginning of round 2, Will would always say, okay, now that your blades have been tempered, because people are saying, oh, no wonder you're breaking all the knives, you don't temper them. No, we actually do. We do the forging the first day and then temper the blades overnight.
Oh, okay.
Then the next day, now the blades are tempered, you can finish them, put handles on them. And then the third day, we do the strength and the sharpness testing. And then we'd send them their home forge and let them do their thing and then come back and do the finale testing. So normally it takes about 4 days. We've done a couple accelerated 3-day ones. But it takes longer than you think. You got to figure we're talking for minimum of 3 hours the first day, minimum of 2 hours the second day, minimum of a couple hours testing the other 2 days, and we got to cut all that into 46 minutes. So there's a lot left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Have you found in your role as a judge, do you have any opportunity to work with these contestants and stuff? I mean, I get, it's sort of a game show, but I mean, do you have opportunity to work with these guys or mentor them or give advice, any of that kind of stuff? Or is it all, just what you see on TV?
Yeah, it's just what you see on TV. It is a game show premise. So we are, we do have rules and regulations. I guess it's the FCC or whatever, but, certain things we can and can't do. We can't interact with the contestants. We get maybe about 5 to 8 minutes after they get read the rules. That all 4 of us get to sit there and chat with them for a few minutes. And we'll ask them, do you have any questions? We can answer questions. We can't tell you what to do. We can't tell you techniques or anything like that. But if you're not used to a certain steel or something like that, you can tell them the basic properties, whatnot. But yeah, they're very, very strict on the fact that, you can't sit there and chit chat with the contestants. You can't talk to them, because they get their phones taken away and everything like that.
Oh, wow.
So, you can't talk to them during it. You can't hang out with them or something like that. So like, it's not like the end of day 1, we can go out and hang out at the hotel bar and have drinks and chit chat or something like that. That's, highly, highly frowned upon. Like, we will fire your ass for that kind of thing. So yeah, they're strict about it.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Anytime you're giving away awards and things like that, you probably have to do that sort of thing. So do you guys have, over the course of the show, I guess some of the biggest value, for the contestants, of course, is getting some national exposure, some things like that. But is there, I also imagine a big piece of that is developing kind of a relationship with guys like you, maybe after the show. Do you guys interact afterwards, or do you get contacted ever? Or do these people just kind of go on and do their thing?
A lot of them I keep in touch with. A bunch of us do, because at the end of every episode or whenever, because again, the only time after that initial few minutes before the challenge starts, we get to talk. We don't get to talk to them again until they're done, whether they're walking up the floor or they're winners. But I tell everybody, I say, look, if you need a hand with anything or whatever, give me a yell. I'm easy to reach, stuff like that. And I've had a lot of contestants come back and ask me questions. Some of them I kind of almost mentor online. I do favors for folks, but I mean, I learn as much from them as they do from me a lot of times, because a lot of times they're trying new techniques and I'm like, oh, I haven't even tried that yet. Oh, I'll let you know how it goes. And we keep swapping information. That's a great thing about the knife community. There's always information getting exchanged and stuff like that. So yeah, I keep in touch with a lot of them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think it's pretty cool that those guys are being sort of, I guess, kind of inducted into this brotherhood or whatever of knife makers, and they're involved in this community, because it seems like younger generations might be more apt to, do their communications online or whatever. So it's cool that these guys are trying to really buy into the craft and work with people like you for advice and things like that versus just trying to be alone or something.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys, I mean, especially ones that are, in the same episode, will stick together and stay in contact on a regular basis, and sometimes get together doing like hammer-ins and demonstrations, get-togethers and stuff like that, which I think is great, because again, you spread more information, you spread more interest in the craft and whatnot. One of the things I'm looking forward to is, because we got the Blade Show in Atlanta coming up, I'm going to be down there on the 5th of June, hanging out with the Broadbeck Grinder guys. And I haven't been to the Blade Show in 4 or 5 years or something like that. But Doug would always set up this big alumni picture in the atrium. Anybody that's been a contestant on the show, and there's a lot of people. Doug's not going this year. I am. So I'm organizing this picture this time. And last time I saw it, it looked like somebody had emptied out a couple high schools, full of maniacs. And lined them all up in a group. So yeah, there's a lot of people, and they like knife shows and stuff. They all get together, put out little banners, put little get-togethers and stuff like that, demonstrations. So yeah, it's that's the way Doug puts it. You're inducted into this alumni family, forged in fire. Make use of it, and a lot of them do.
Yeah. So I have a random question, nothing to do with knife making, but what happens to the pigs and all the animals you guys use for testing? I hope one of you guys has a good smoker and can make use out of it.
Well, some of the meat does go to the crew. Whoever wants it can take it. But a lot of it goes to a wolf rescue program, up in the Northeast, because they're bringing in wolves, rehabilitating them, and releasing them into the wild again. And this way, taking, the boar, the deers, the pigs and all that stuff, feeding that to the wolves. That way they're not feeding them kibble the whole time. So that way, when they re-release them, they've still got that, in their head of eating meat, eating carcasses, scavenging and stuff like that. So I like that. I think that's a good thing. They don't just get thrown in the dumpster or something like that. It always gets used.
Yeah.
We're knife makers, man. We're scrappers. We use everything. We don't throw away anything.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, I would throw that on a smoker right now. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask you. So, Doug Markita, he's a edge weapon specialist. Does he do any forging? Does he make blades at all, or does he just use them proficiently?
Doug, if you look online, there's a video of Doug and Will coming to my shop. I taught them both how to make knives, and Doug would rather design knives than make them. He made a really nice knife, but it's not really his thing. He's more the end user, which is a great thing to have on the show. Have somebody that's used to using different blades, and I test mine a certain way. Dave and Ben test theirs a certain way. Doug does his, and having that Kali martial art expertise of using blades for years in different applications. It's a good thing to have on the judges panel, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's good to have the maker, the historian, and the end user. So we try to cover all the bases with 3 judges.
So Dave Baker is as the historian. Are most of the knives that are the final contestant or competition, are those a lot of those his work that he's made and
Yeah.
replicated?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Dave does most of the finale weapons. I'm more of the round 1 or 2 guy. Round 3, it's like, okay, if you want me to take a sword and beat the hell out of block ice, sure, no problem. But I ain't that concerned about the rest of it. Yeah, Dave's more the historical guy. So, he pretty much takes care of that aspect of things for us.
Yeah. So I'm still fascinated. I would like to maybe, if you don't mind, just sort of getting into a little bit more sort of the arc of producing one of these shows. We've talked about a couple aspects of it, but I think it would be cool to hear sort of linearly how it goes, sort of from the beginning of a season to the end of the season. And then maybe, talk a little bit about what, sorts of things might be coming up in the future.
Okay. I don't know what you mean literally.
Oh yeah, I just when the season starts, like, do people all arrive at the same time? Like, hey, I mean, how does the thing sort of begin and get rolling, and then proceed through the series?
Are you booked for a 3 period and then go from there? And that's
we're booked for a certain amount of episodes beginning of season, and then I split them with Ben because I honestly I don't want to spend all that time up there. I get knives to make and stuff like that. So yeah, me and Ben will split up our schedule. But yeah, we get booked for a certain amount of seasons, and then we just bring the contestants in as we go. Sometimes, especially with the COVID, there's been delays. People getting on flights and exchanges and stuff like that. But it's pretty much well set up ahead of time. We got to do a little juggling once in a while, but pretty much as soon as one group of contestants goes to their home forge to make the finale weapon, we bring another 4 in. And we just keep rotating them through like that.
Oh, okay. That works. So it
because otherwise we put people up in hotels for weeks on end.
Yeah. So when they go to do their finale weapon, they get 4 days or 3 days, however much time you give them.
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems like they have zero sleep from the time they start the show to the time they end, with the flight and everything in between. Do you give them is there kind of like a buffer in between there that we don't know about? Or is it, fly home, start work, and fly back?
No, actually, there's actually, and I kind of hate the fact this happened because I feel bad for them. But sometimes there's a few weeks between them finishing their finale weapon and sending it back to the set before they actually do their finale.
Oh, okay.
So imagine sitting around your own shop for 2, 3, 4 weeks, like thinking about all the stuff you did. Like, did I do that right? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? And it's just like a total screw with your own head thing. But yeah, if we give them 5 days, it usually ends up being a total of 45 hours. So that first day they'll get 5 hours. That way they're not coming home, jumping off the plane and jumping right into the forge. And then they got 10 hours each day afterwards. And then as soon as that last day is over, the production team that's there, which is usually a producer and a camera person, they'll photograph everything, box it up, and ship it out right then and there. So, there's no funny business of playing with things after the time's up. And then it comes back to the set, and Dave and the test crew will crack everything open, photograph it, document everything, just make sure nothing was changed in transit, and then it just goes from there. Then next opening for a finale, bring them back.
That's pretty neat. Well,
that's all the boring TV stuff.
Right.
But I think it's interesting to hear how some of that goes behind the scene, right? Because when you see it on TV, it's very slick, it's very produced. They always cut for the most dramatic scenes, that sort of stuff. So I think it is sometimes entertaining to hear about the behind the scenes.
One of the good things about it too is the fact that this is season 8. We've got most of the same crew we had from season 1.
That's awesome.
So the fact that these folks enjoy working on the show, and they've picked up so much, and they have so much more knowledge about things. And I've been pushing to try to get a crew episode where we can get some fill-ins for the camera crew or sound crew or whatever,
and see if they would make a knife.
Crew actually, because they probably know as much about knife making as most beginner makers out there, because they've learned so much through osmosis over the years. So, but yeah, I've got several of the camera guys that are like, Jay, yeah, see if you could do that. We want to get out there. I was like, I know you do. I can see it in your eyes.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Well, and I'm sure, it sort of adds to that sort of familial quality of coming back and doing the show, after a season or so. And you guys, have sort of been through it together, coming back season after season, I imagine is actually a little bit exciting. It's probably a good opportunity to get back and see one another. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't as much fun this last year because with COVID, we're all split up in little groups. And I mean, I used to, on days off, I used to go onto the set and make knives, just, something to do, have some fun. And, during the day, I'd wander around the set and, chit chat with, this person, that person, whatever. And we just couldn't do it this past season. It was a lot of being locked up in your trailer and a lot of separation, stay in your own pod and all that kind of stuff. So, it was a little challenging this season. But no, it's like coming to a family reunion at the beginning of each season, and when you get done, you get to hug everybody. Oh, we're going to miss you. It's all right. We'll see you again next season. So yeah, it's like an extended family.
Yeah.
That's really,
I was going to add,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to ask you if someone's getting started in this and they want to, try out making a blade, what is a good first step as far as like, I know there's classes available and there's people you can reach out to. Maybe could you break down?
Buy my DVDs.
Buy your DVDs. Exactly.
Buy my DVDs.
Okay.
they actually let me get away with that on the show a couple times.
That's great.
But yeah, I mean, look for the information that's out there. There's tons of.
There is tons of it, and I
just got passed a note by my wife. Sorry, hold on. All right, yeah, just let me know if they show up.
Yep.
All right. Yep. Okay, honey. My producer passed me a note. Said I have to look out for the Frontier Internet guy.
There you go. So buy the DVDs, watch the show. That's great. What's the minimum you need to get started? I know there's coal forges out there, maybe a belt sander and a grinder.
Actually, the first thing I suggest folks to do is before you start buying tools and stuff, and it's a lot easier now with, again, the resurgence of knife making and the show and all that stuff, making it more popular. Find somebody local, even relatively local, that's got a shop. Give them a call. Just tell them, I'm interested in getting into this. I don't know enough of where to start. Can I come hang out at your shop for an hour and ask a couple questions? That's my first suggestion. That way you can go see, especially if there's enough makers in your area, you can pick up somebody whose work you actually really like and go see what tools they have. Go see, what do you use the most? What do you use the least? I've seen knife makers that started out like me. I started out with a little homemade hand crank coal forge and a 4-inch block of steel and a bucket of sand for an anvil.
Yeah.
And, go to town that way. And I've seen the other extreme where folks that, had some money, went out and bought way more tools than they needed and ended up, selling a bunch of them later on at a loss. So I always suggest try to find a maker, preferably somebody whose work you like, but regardless, find somebody and just go check out their shop, see what they have. Again, what do you use the most? What do you use the least? Why? You can find out a lot of information in a very short amount of time. And that works better for somebody like me because I'm very visually oriented. I can read something in a book 100 times and not figure it out. But if somebody shows me once or twice, I've got it.
Yeah.
So, again, that's for somebody who's like me. But yeah, I would suggest doing something like that before you spend any money on tools.
Yeah, the ingenuity of some of the tools and the shops that people build out is mind-boggling. Taking a log splitter and making a press out of it, and some of the sanders that they just make from wood, or it's crazy to see just the ingenuity of what they're doing. I guess they're craftsmen. They're used to making stuff by hand, and if they can make their own tools, why not?
Yeah, I mean, as far as grinders, that's a bit technical for me. But I mean, when I started out, I wanted to change over to gas because it's cleaner, it's cheaper, it's more efficient than coal. Everybody likes coal. Sorry, that's my opinion. But I started out with coal, and it was just a lot of maintenance, a lot of smoke, a lot of mess, and I didn't know what was a good gas forge, what wasn't. So I just went ahead and built my own. And same with the hydraulic press. I wanted to, make Damascus easier and larger bars. And I couldn't afford, the money for a hydraulic press. So I found some plans online and built my own. So sometimes that's the best thing. And I tell people all the time too, when they're going on Forge and Fire, there are great tools on Forge and Fire on the set, but they're not your tools.
Yeah.
You might have a crappy belt grinder, but you know how to work it just right, so it works fine. So that's one of the other challenges of going on the set and competing, is they're not your tools. Aside from the fact that there's camera people all over the place and 3 other smiths trying not to brand each other with hot steel, you're not working with your own tools. Like if I go, I've been making knives for a long time. If I go to somebody else's shop and start using their stuff, it's going to take me longer, and it's going to take me a little bit to figure out the quirks of each tool, because they all have them. So that's one of the challenges. But you can always make your own stuff. It's amazing what some of these guys do. Some of these power hammers, they got spare tires on them spinning around and stuff like that. Like you said, it's pretty ingenious what they come up with.
Yeah, I lived in the Philippines for a while, and I actually had a sword made while I was there. I was out walking in the jungle and came across this guy who was a blacksmith, and he literally made out of clay his forge and everything from a nipa hut, and he's making knives out of there, mainly sundongs, like a machete kind of thing, and tools for farming. But I had him make a sword and put his name on it, and it's one of my prized possessions that I own. Is just the coolest thing ever. He made it out of a leaf spring cool. of a jeepney. So it's pretty
nice.
neat. Yeah.
Good. 51 spring steel. Good stuff.
Well, Jay, we're kind of getting to that time frame right now. Are you still taking classes? Can people come and coach with you, or is that your schedule too crowded for that? I noticed on your website you said reach out and maybe we can make it fit, but can people actually come and take classes with you still?
Not yet. I'm still finishing my vaccination thing. All the classes were put on hold because of the COVID thing.
That makes sense.
So once I get that squared away, I'll throw something out on the emailing list to start opening dates up again for classes. So that will be coming back, but it's just not right now.
That's great. In the meantime, where can people learn more about you and check out your videos, your downloadable stuff, and your DVDs, all that kind of good stuff?
mountainhollow.net is the website, and Jay Nielsen Knives on Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. Post a lot of upcoming stuff and stuff I'm working on, and sometimes just some goofy stuff, like I recently started posting horror movie stuff, and everybody's starting to realize, oh, I didn't know Jay Nielsen was a horror nut. And I am. I've been a horror movie nut my whole life. And it's funny, people finding that out. And you were just mentioning earlier about wanting to buy a forge and start playing around with, making blades and doing your own stuff. The gentleman who does the claws for Freddy Krueger, I did a few posts that Anders Ericsson.
I've seen those. I saw your posts, and those gloves look amazing.
they are amazing. They're amazingly affordable too. But Anders made me one, and I love it. And I just started talking to him last week. He's usually has somebody do most of his, a lot of his blade work for him. And he wants to get a little forge and start doing his own heat treating and tempering on the blades and stuff like that. So it's spreading. The disease is spreading everywhere.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, then I should ask you now, knowing about your fascination with horror movies. So every year in October, we do 31 days of horror movies with our family. Usually, there's the older version of it that just me and my wife do. And then this last year we involved our kids and we watched all the classic stuff, the early Mummies and the early Wolfmans and the early vampire movies and stuff. And actually I quite loved the early Frankenstein, like 38 or whatever it was.
Oh, that was classic. Yeah.
So, but I wonder, so what's your top 5? What are the best to watch in terms of horror films?
Make him think to 5.
That's a lot for a nightmare to count to 5.
Well, I'll settle for 3. Honestly, I'll settle for whatever you want to put out.
Well, it's funny. I got a collage in there that Valeria Busquets, she's on Instagram also. She did portraits of all the judges, and my wife liked them so much that she had her do a collage of like the 80s horror, which has got, like the Alien, Predator, Michael, Jason, all those classics. I love the Evil Dead, even though he's using a chainsaw most of the time. And my stepson made his own chainsaw. I'm not that good. I'll stick with knives. But I've got her doing another one that's got a second one that's got, Ash from the Evil Dead. The Original Thing, John Carpenter, another great one. Christine, gotta love the killer car. I can't do top 5. I could just go on all afternoon.
I love it. That's awesome.
Great. Well, so your website is mountainhollow.net.
Yep.
If you feel like waiting for 4 years for a knife, you might order one. And if you feel like taking some classes once COVID kind of slows down a little bit, that might be a possibility as well.
I actually do have an emailing list on the website that people can join too, because I do make an occasional stock knife now and then, and I'll put those up for sale too. So, if somebody wants to jump on there and join the emailing list, that might be a way to get one a little sooner.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jay. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking your afternoon and doing this with us. And
I had a great time.
Be happier.
Thanks.
So,
right.
And cool. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thanks for having me on here. And I can't say much about what's coming up on the show, but we're going to cover one of my favorite topics.
Horror
coming up. That's all I can say. I love the Halloween episodes that we've done in the past. So you might see something like that coming down the road.
Sweet.
Excellent. Well, we'll all be watching this season and look forward to seeing you there.
All right. Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.